and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vicini. We're powered by CLNS Radio. Today's sponsors, two of the most valuable things you can have during the NCAA tournament. You need seats, you need somewhere to place bets. MyBookie and SeatGeek are covering you on that behalf. Today on the show, we have Matthew Norlander, my good old colleague over at CBS Sports. Matt is, I feel like your favorite time is the NCAA tournament, right? Like, it is the time of the year that you get genuinely just so excited for.
Well, I'm excited all the time, but yes, I do have a childlike enthusiasm for this event that does not die down. And yeah, man, I'm excited for the second weekend. I actually thought the first weekend was pretty fulfilling, even though we did not have a buzzer beater and we did not have monumental upsets. But we did have, 2-2s and one going down. And by the way, a lot of what we got on Saturday and Sunday were really close and intense games. So hopefully the second weekend, even though it's much, we don't get nearly as much inventory, but the matchups are really good. Hopefully we get a couple of, borderline epics.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. And before we start, I should let the listeners know, typically I have some sort of agenda for guests, right? Like typically I have a few questions that I know I want to get out. I know that I want to start the show somehow. I have a timing for when I want to hit sponsors. I got back from the gym a little bit late today, so this one's going to be helter-skelter. And luckily, Matt and I have kind of a chemistry from all those times together on the CBS podcast. So this should just be like riding a bike, right?
Yeah, man, we're cruising down the hill right now, and I'm going to shout out Devin Downey all of, 2 minutes into this podcast because you messed up with Parrish. And by the way, the shout out to Devin Downey origin came when it was a 3-man podcast. You were on it. Now, Parrish has taken the reins on sort of the duties of shouting out Devin Downey on the podcast, and that's fine, but really it's more of a 3-man entity, and you deserve plenty of credit because you were right there in that conversation. And the legend of Devin Downey came from when it was you, me, and Parrish on the podcast. So I wanted to make sure we got plenty of Devin Downey love in. And obviously it's South Carolina in the Sweet 16. I think it's too funny is the fact that the program had never won back-to-back games in an NCAA tournament until this year. And, of course, it happens in the shout-out to Devin Downey era. It's all too perfect.
Yeah, and we'll go to South Carolina first, I guess. But first, I've been trying to figure out like my own random player to shout out. And it was funny, whenever I was doing the podcast with Rob Doster on Tuesday, we shouted out Tom Pritchard from Indiana, like basically Indiana's best player whenever Tom Crean first got there, which is hilarious in so many ways. And the amount of like Tom Pritchard like references I got on Twitter was hilarious. Like I got like 5 or 6 people sending me like that ridiculous tip dunk from Pritchard. So I'm like debating, do I want to start shouting out like Tom Pritchard on the podcast? But he's not Devin Downey. It'll never be the same. You know what I mean?
It will never be the same. I mean, Tom Pritchard, first of all,
outrageous reference.
That's almost over the line too random. But you got to get that sweet spot of a guy who is no longer in the consciousness of even the avid college basketball fan, but at one point had either a dominant streak, a funky name, a really good game, or there was some identifiable quality about him. And that's why Devin Downey worked so perfectly, because he was a small dude who played for South Carolina, who's almost never good, but helped beat the best team in the country that year with Kentucky. And I only hope that Devin Downey is going to be in Manhattan for these games. I'm gonna do some gumshoe on the scene reporting on Thursday. See if I can't get more info on this. I'm hoping. I'm really hoping for it, but we shall see.
So yeah, let's start with South Carolina. South Carolina, I guess, is it the biggest surprise of teams in the Sweet 16? Probably is, right?
Yep. I think by a firm margin. Michigan, you can't say is a surprise given the way that it had been playing. And I actually had Oklahoma State beating Louisville, so I didn't even think the Cardinals were going to get to the second weekend. South Carolina, because it beat the odds-on favorite to win the title, and for much of February just looked brutally bad. For them to turn the way they did, put up 65 points. I saw a stat that Krzyzewski had never allowed that many points in a single half in his entire career, and yet South Carolina did it in the tournament, 65 second-half points. So they are the biggest surprise. And their matchup with Baylor is interesting. I think Baylor will win the game, Sam, and I wonder how much people will even engage with that game, because South Carolina obviously is not known for its basketball. And on top of that, although Frank Martin is certainly a coach that gets a lot of people's attention because he's so gift-worthy. They just don't have a lot of appeal to them because in most years, South Carolina, if Devin Downey's not on the roster, you're not going to have huge reasons to turn in because there's not a lot of star power there. So I wonder, if they get caught up in the moment. We usually get a couple of games each year in the Sweet 16 that wind up being kind of snoozers. I could see this. I could totally see it where Baylor's length, interior presence, Motley has a huge game, Thornwell can't repeat what he's done in the first weekend, and Baylor just kind of rolls to like a 74-59 kind of win and shuts down South Carolina's offense. Because remember, Baylor's really good on the defensive end. I'm going to be there. I'd love to get a close game, don't get me wrong, but I actually don't think that's going to be a great one.
Yeah, and the funny thing is about the fact that, Coach K gave up the most points. Duke gives up the most points in the Coach K era during that half. South Carolina has the 122nd best offense in the country, according to Ken Pom. That is insane that they were able to put up 65 points in that half. The funny thing is that you say about Baylor, I think South Carolina has the best player on the floor in that game. I think that, and this is something I've been on the train about today, and it's because I'm writing about Sindarius Thornwell at Vice tomorrow. Sindarius Thornwell, to me, is a genuine top 10 player in the entire country. If you look at the numbers, he is averaging 25 points per 40 minutes. He's the second leading scorer in points per game, according to, or of the high major teams is what it is. He is putting up a 59 true shooting percentage. He's a tremendous defender. He's probably one of the 10 best perimeter defenders in all of the country. So you have a genuine top 10 scorer in the country, I would say, even if he's second in high major scoring. I think it's probably fair to say he's right around a top 10 scorer in the country, a top 10 defender on the perimeter in the country, and he gets zero respect around the country, really. I think that SEC people and SEC coaches recognized it with the fact that they gave him the SEC Player of the Year, which is something that at the time I kind of argued that I thought Malik Monk should have won. But I went back and watched a lot of South Carolina this week, and holy crap, is Sindarius Thornwell awesome.
He is really good. I remember being relatively high on him last year. First of all, De'Aaron Fox was a better and more valuable player for Kentucky than Malik Monk, so I don't even buy the Monk stuff. He scores, he's fun, so that's why people default to that. Fox is a better and more valuable player for Kentucky than Monk. There's no argument against it. There's
probably
none.
Agree with you.
There's no argument against it. I feel like the only person that's been, and I did a lot with my freshman watch, been harping on this all year. Now, occasionally Monk has an amazing half or a great streak, or without a doubt, he's electric. But now you're seeing
the reason that I would have Monk over Fox is because Fox missed that time in the SEC. He's missed three or four games. And
you could argue that with Thornwell missing games as well. That's why he's not considered Did he miss 4 or did he miss 5 games? He missed a chunk for sure because they were undefeated with him on the floor for a good while.
Yeah, he missed 4 games due to suspension and then a couple games due to a knee injury or something, I believe. I understand that and I do get it, and I understand that it's kind of a double standard, but to me, his overall value is just so incredible. He does it on both ends of the floor. He creates turnovers. He's a ridiculous passer. He has a 20% assist rate as well as being an incredible scorer from the wing. This guy is an incredible basketball player, and I will even say that South Carolina will have more NBA players on the floor than Baylor will because I think P.J. Dozier is going to play in the NBA just like Sindarius Thornwell is.
Probably true, and there's been something to be said about the fact that Drew has been as good as he has with this team.
Agreed.
Considering the coaching job that he's been able to do. I'm way more in on Motley now than I was 4 months ago. Thought he's been terrific. Manu Lecomte this might be, I don't know. It could be overstating it. I do like a lot of what he does on the floor, but sometimes he gets a little out of hand. Would you agree that he might be a poor man's Angel Rodriguez with some of his decision making at some points? That might be overstating. Yeah,
no, he has a 20 turnover rate or a 20% turnover rate. He's definitely a little wild from time to time.
Yeah,
better shooter though.
Yes, exactly. And Angel would sometimes just take these shots where he'd be okay, man. So he doesn't have that in him. But you are correct in terms of South Carolina will have two of the best three. I think that Motley is better than Dozier, no doubt about it.
That I agree with.
I would, man, if you put everyone out there, I probably would take Thornwell before Motley if we were playing a game of pickup and I had first pick. I would probably take Thornwell just barely. Ultimately, though, I just think Baylor's defense is too good. I don't think South Carolina's going to be able to score, and they've relied on Thornwell so much. If they shut him down effectively, then it's lights out.
Yeah, I think that's fair, especially since Dozier's been a little bit hit or miss over the course of the last 2 months. We don't want to make this a South Carolina podcast, so I'm just going to put it out there for Matt. What is the matchup that you are most looking forward to this week? Is it that Kentucky-UCLA matchup that everyone else is looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm going to even push that aside because to me, I have a preview. By the time some people are listening to this, it might be up on cbssports.com. We're recording this on Wednesday. I filed it, but up Thursday morning. It's just an all-out preview on Kentucky-UCLA because to me, it's the most. I actually went back and looked at the past 15 years worth of Sweet 16 games, kind of jogged my own memory. There hasn't been a regional semifinal that I've been more excited about than this one. So let's just push that one to the side because I think it's so overwhelmingly the number one game. If Kansas-Purdue wasn't in Kansas City, it would probably be that game. Now, I'm still excited for it, but I can just totally see Kansas getting a legitimate boost because that building is going to be so overwhelmed by Jayhawks fans. Yeah. It's going to be wild. Gonzaga, West Virginia is my answer, Sam. Man, the way that West Virginia is going to roll 10 guys out there, I figure Gonzaga is going to have to go small. But I actually wonder, Shem can pass, Przemek Karnowski can pass so well. Zach Collins can run and play with them. I actually wonder if few and Collins has actually looked pretty good as of late. I wonder how much floor time Tillion's going to get in that game. But bigs have been good enough here where I wonder if few almost tries to resist what Huggins is going to throw at him. And if he can have bigs out there, and if Williams-Goss can handle what West Virginia is going to give him, and that's because I'm not convinced that he will. I think that he can, but I'm not totally convinced of it. And a lot of people with West Virginia, it's like the famous saying, everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. It does feel like Notre Dame should beat West Virginia a decent amount of time with those two teams played. And yet when you watch them in their one game, West Virginia really exacted what it wanted to do. So I'm totally fascinated by Gonzaga's guard personnel, how it will handle, and then if they can win using their bigs, then they're really going to have an advantage. I do think Gonzaga will win, and I actually, my gun-to-head prediction is that Gonzaga wins, and they're able to get some separation in the second half, and it's just enough. But listen, I can totally see a scenario where that game starts, West Virginia hair on fire, and it's 16-5. They got the lead, and it's a repeat of Notre Dame all over again because that cushion that they got against the Irish basically afforded them that they wanted to play, and Notre Dame couldn't ever fully close the gap. Yeah,
that's a really good point. I think the key for West Virginia in that game is getting efficient looks offensively because it allows them to set up their press. Gonzaga right now is the number one defense in the country, according to KenPom. So if Gonzaga can slow down West Virginia's half-court offense, if West Virginia just makes threes randomly, this is going to be trouble. And West Virginia is a little bit better of a shooting team than I think they've gotten credit for this year. They're hitting 37% of their threes. They get really good ball movement. I'm a little bit worried on that behalf that if West Virginia just comes out and starts nailing shots, this thing's going to go sideways for Gonzaga. But I think Gonzaga is the better team. They're the more consistent team, and the defense should be able to hold the day for them to get past West Virginia. But, man, like you said, it's just in a 7-game series, I think Notre Dame probably beats West Virginia because I agree with you. I think they get used to the idea of the press. But in a 1-game setting where you are not used to that press at all, and it's a totally different press than anything that you will face around the country, man, West Virginia is a damn tough team to beat.
I agree. And, given, West Virginia is a national title contender. I wrote that back in January, and you've hit on some of the reasons why. Because this team can shoot. It can shoot from deep. This is the 6th-ranked team, actually ranked ahead of Kansas point. Now, they can sometimes get a little burned with their personnel. Actually, they can hit threes. I don't love their shot selection sometimes from deep, but sometimes it pays off without a doubt. And I'm very interested to see how Nathan Adrian faces up against Gonzaga's bigs. You're dead on about Gonzaga's defense. Some of it's schedule affected. Totally get that. But even if you want to, it's still like Pomeroy adjusts for the schedule that you face and the opponent that you face. So overall, like this is you cannot, there's no debate. This is one of the very best defenses in America. Just fascinated by the game, fascinated by Gonzaga's been to Sweet 16s plenty of times before. I don't think this team will be feeling any kind of pressure like that. I think when you're a number 1 seed and you're actually going up against West Virginia, the fact that you're a 1 seed has nothing to do with it anymore. You're on the floor. You're facing, like from a very human primal standpoint, like it just does not matter once you're on the floor and you're facing a defense like that. I don't think you even have time to think about pressure because you're dealing with legitimate, actual basketball pressure there. That's the one I'm most interested in. And then I know you didn't ask. My number 2 is probably Kansas-Purdue. Now we haven't at CBS. We haven't named our player of the year yet because we don't know who it's going to be, and it won't necessarily. Like Swanigan could lose this game by 20 points, and he still might win our player of the year. But if Mason's awesome and Kansas gets to a Final Four, I mean, we will decide basically Sunday night who we're going to name for player of the year. And we feel, and I know you know this, but to kind of give listeners an idea. We've always felt, and Parrish and I have always felt this, we had this conversation about 4 years ago or so, we felt that the postseason play should matter, but we don't want the Final Four to be, something that totally overweighs it. So we feel as though how you play up until the Final Four, like you could be on a team that gets knocked out in the second round, or the first round, even a la Denzel Valentine, and still be worthy of getting that award. But if you show up big in the Sweet 16 or Elite 8, maybe that is the tipping point if you're right there with 2 or 3 other guys. So with Mason and Swanigan, it's right there because Swanigan was awesome in the first weekend. Very interested in that game. I actually want your opinion on this. I think they will put Jackson on Swanigan. Now, Swanigan's a bigger player, but Jackson is an amazing competitor and an amazing defender, and Swanigan will want to step out. And when he does that, and if they play him like that and they want to run through the offense with him as sort of a soft 4, then Jackson would be the ideal guy to put on him. Do you expect that they will go with that attack? I think that they should, because I actually think that if you got Swanigan off his game early and if he wasn't able to produce from outside, you might have an advantage there. But, and I'll toss it back to you here, Sam, also, Kansas isn't overwhelming inside, so I wonder if maybe Painter just sells out and wants to keep Swanee in the key, and if they do that, how does KU opt to defend there?
So I guess that my thing is then who do you put Landon Lucas on? Because, I mean, maybe you could put Svi on Vince Edwards, but Josh Jackson seems like the perfect matchup to take Vince Edwards out of the game.
So one other thing here, and I wrote about this before, Painter does not put Haas, Swanigan, and Edwards on the floor at the same time. There's 3 highest scorers. He did this randomly against Vermont for 7 or 8 minutes. I think to throw Vermont off, and it actually ended up working. But now Lucas isn't a bad defender. He's made huge strides. I totally
Lucas is
get
a really
it.
Good defender, I think.
Yeah, but I'm talking about if 18 and 20 feet from the hoop, he's not in Jackson's world. That's all. Jackson's way better. I get that, but
well, here's the thing. I think that they will probably play Swanigan and Haas together at some point just to get Kansas in foul trouble inside. I think that's when you'll see Jackson matched up with Swanigan. Wouldn't be a surprise to me at all there. I don't think, though, that you can go Lucas on, Vince Edwards or Dakota Mathias maybe would be, the other best option. But, he likes to run off screens, and that seems like a bad idea. It's a hard cross match, I guess. Yeah,
I agree. Well, we'll see. I think Kansas wins the game. I think it can be a good game. I'm very interested to see how much they go to Swanigan, who's by the way, who's been he's been good. It's interesting with Swanigan because he's been good, but sometimes they go to that well a little too much, and they kind of bank on him, just eating up the boards on his own misses because sometimes his just force of will is crazy. I'm not convinced that's going to work against Kansas. I also think, Purdue's got some nice guards, maybe even still a little bit underrated with what they can do. But obviously just not on the level of Frank and Devontae. And then if you get a good game out of Svi, depending on how much they want to have him on the floor, but if you get some good offense out of him, then I think it's just lights out.
Yeah, I agree with you. And here's the thing with what Kansas is going to do. Kansas is just going to take Swanigan like off the dribble constantly. They're going to put him in cross matches. They're going to put him in pick and roll settings with Landon Lucas, and assuming that he ends up guarding Landon Lucas, and they're going to play man. They're just going to put him in they're going to put him in screen and roll. They're going to make him guard screen and rolls, and that's not something he's shown he can do this year. Just full stop against an elite guard. He didn't show it against Melo Trimble. Deontay Burton took him off the dribble like crazy in that second half of the game against Iowa State. I don't like the matchup at all for Purdue. I just kind of don't. Unless they can find a way to get Kansas in foul trouble inside, which is very possible given their size, it's a tough matchup for them defensively.
Would agree. So those are my two ones. What are your two most anticipated matchups? If both are not what we've already talked about.
We'll talk about maybe Kentucky-UCLA at the end. I'm super interested in Butler, North Carolina, because Butler, I did not think they were all that good this year, but they're one of those teams that plays up to competition. Like, they have these random, wacky losses. Indiana State, St. John's, they lost to Creighton without Maurice Watson. They lost to, solid teams like Seton Hall and Providence, but probably shouldn't have lost those games even. They lost to Xavier in the Big East tournament, which, coming into the Big East tournament, Xavier was not looking all that hot, even though they are right now. Butler has just given them so many problems over the last couple of years when they've played. I remember when they played in Atlantis, Butler just demolished them on the offensive glass and caused all kind of significant problems for them. And I wonder if they're going to kind of try and go away from what they've done this year to try and keep pace with North Carolina. They don't really like to crash the offensive glass. They like to try and get back in transition and stop that. So, it's always really difficult when a team is really good at offensive rebounding, but also killer in transition.
Exactly.
Because you have to watch what you do in terms of or defensive rebounding. You have to watch to see if you're going to be able to, crash the glass and get extra possessions, but you also have to watch in transition. I'm just very interested because I really trust Chris Holtmann to figure out that equation. And boy, Roy Williams did not give me a whole lot of confidence last weekend with the way he coached in the second half against Arkansas.
Yeah, he's had a few random decisions like that. You could argue that he made some blunders against Duke and when they got kicked out of the ACC tournament as well.
That too, yeah. Leaving Joel Berry on the bench for 10 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. You could hear Carolina fans in the building screaming at Roy to put him back in the game. Butler's getting a 7.5. I love Butler to cover, to be honest. Now, but there's a reason why it's 7.5, because if it really gets out of hand, then Butler can lose by 20. There's no doubt about it. You had Carolina, they get you with the secondary break, they can run, and then they're amazing on the offensive glass. It's a really hard thing to combat when you've got Butler specific personnel, like the guys that Butler wins with. It's hard to do. This will be when I look at the biggest point spread, that would have to be, and I'm not even all in on Carolina, by the way. I like them. I've just been saying there's just something about them. I don't see him getting to the title game. I don't know what it is. I like Justin Jackson's been great. I do love Barry's game, but there's just something there that I cannot put my finger on it. But that said, Butler beating Carolina, I think would be the most sizable upset we could ask for in the Sweet 16. I am fascinated by it. I'd love it to be a really good, close game. I think the only way that can happen for Butler, going to have to get a top 5 game this season out of Keelan Martin. He's going to be asked to do a lot. Yep. Kamar Baldwin will probably, it's pardon the cliche, but he will have to not play like a freshman, in my opinion, and will have to really step up.
The key for him is that Kamar Baldwin just needs to be able to defend Joel Berry. And as long as he kind of shuts down what Joel Berry wants to do, I think that's the biggest key for Butler. Because if you look at what Kamar Baldwin did in the first 2 round games, he totally was a big part of taking Giddy Potts out of that game for Middle Tennessee, and Giddy Potts is really good. Right. He's a big part in taking Keon Johnson, the 5'7" kid who averages 20-plus points a game for Winthrop out of the game. He's a really good defensive player, and I'm going to be interested. He's really long. I think he's the kind of guy who can give Joel Berry problems.
That's an interesting observation, and you're probably right on the money with that. Would love to see if he can do that. I'm not convinced that he can, but if he does, then they got a shot.
We're going to get back to Matt Norlander in a second, but first, just a quick word from our sponsors. First, SeatGeek. The college basketball season and NCAA tournament are in full swing, and SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to your favorite team's games. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There's nothing like being in the stadium for the biggest plays of the year, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. It's by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere, and with just a few taps, I can instantly find seats. I was watching the Dave Chappelle special over on Netflix this week, and I was just thinking the whole time that the first episode was on at the Hollywood Palladium, man, that is right down the street for me. I wish I would have used SeatGeek to be there. It would have been so easy, and I'm sure I would have gotten a great price even if the tickets were not cheap. Best of all, my listeners get a $20 rebate off of their first SeatGeek purchase. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click add a promo code. Enter the promo code GAMETHEORY, GAMETHEORY. SeatGeek will send you $20 after you've made your first ticket purchase. Again, that's download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code GAMETHEORY today. Our second sponsor is MyBookie. It's time to talk to you about the boatload of money you can make this week betting at mybookie.ag. If you haven't checked them out yet, this is the perfect time to get into the action. The madness of March is here. Lay down some money and score big, unlike me, on college hoops. Join me and thousands of online players and start betting at mybookie.ag and hopefully get more success than I have had over the last 2 weeks. If you've been following me on Twitter, you can tell that I have just taken an absolute bath on college basketball over the last, really since conference tournament season started. I would only recommend a service that's been good to me and our listeners. That's why I urge you to make your way to MyBookie. You win, they pay, fast and without any hassles. You're wasting your time betting anywhere else. They even have in-game live betting so you can place a bet after tip-off. Join now and MyBookie will match your first deposit with a 50% bonus. That's right. If you join with $100, you will get an extra $50 to play with. Use promo code THEORY, THEORY, to activate this offer. Visit MyBookie today or call 844-900-BETS. That's BETS. Play, win, and get paid over at mybookie.ag. Let's talk about Kentucky-UCLA real quick, and then I'm going to have another question for you. I'm just coming up with these off the top of the dome, so this is going to be fun.
All good, man.
De'Aaron Fox, Lonzo Ball is probably going to be the best matchup of the NCAA tournament from an individual perspective, right? Like, yeah. I know that Josh Jackson, Miles Bridges was last weekend, and it was tremendous, and both those guys just totally balled out, but De'Aaron Fox actually got the better of Lonzo Ball in their first game. Like, he was quicker. He dominated Lonzo off the dribble, especially in the first half. Lonzo eventually got going. Turned the ball over 5 times in the first half, I believe, and turned it over maybe once in the second half. He got comfortable.
Correct.
But this is going to tell the tale of the game, I think. If De'Aaron Fox outplays Lonzo Ball again, I think Kentucky wins. Do you think that is accurate, and do you think that it's that simplistic?
I do not think it's that simplistic. Now I wrote about this. Lonzo's worst game from a turnover perspective this year was against Kentucky. He had 6 turnovers. He didn't have another game where he had that many turnovers the rest of the season. Because when you have Aaron Holiday coming off the bench, TJ Leaf wrecked Kentucky the first time. I actually don't think that's going to happen again. Bam's been playing better. He's a better player now than he was then. I think there are too many elements in play. I'm riveted by this matchup because Lonzo's actually a fairly solid defender when he wants to be, but no one's checking De'Aaron for 20 minutes, let alone 40. It's just not happening. You can't do it. De'Aaron doesn't have the range that Lonzo does. I'll be interested to see how much Lonzo, because this is also these guys are potential lottery picks, and there's going to be a lot of pride on the line here too, and all eyes at the next level are going to be watching this game, and Lonzo, is he going to try and get his, and will they need him to get his, or can he have just a typical Lonzo 8 kind of game, and is that going to be enough? I'm really fascinated by that. I think I wrote this in my preview. If you tell me that Malik Monk shoots 40% from the field and scores 15 points, I'm telling you Kentucky is losing this game. There are other things that are going to have to happen in order for allow the Wildcats to win, but Malik has been inconsistent to say the least over the past 3 to need a big game, and they're probably going to get it from him because you're going to have anywhere from 78 to 84 possessions in this game. He's going to have a lot of chances. It's going to be running fun, and he's going to put it up. So as long as he doesn't go super cold and is like 2 for 11 from 3-point range, he should be okay. I in my preview, I think I have it like 591. Have UCLA winning, but I also tagged it with this. It is interesting to me that Kentucky rates as the better Ken Pom team. It has the better pedigree in terms of having success at the program and at the coaching level. It's the higher seed. There's a lot to be said for Kentucky's defense, which is so much better than UCLA's offense. They both can go, and yet you check your office pool, your buddy pool. So many people have UCLA winning this game. And UCLA is only a 1-point favorite. It's so weird to me that listen, people aren't not giving Kentucky a chance. It's just I've never seen Kentucky as a 2 seed just so dismissed in terms of, it feels like everyone wants UCLA to win this game. Kentucky has a really real chance of winning here, and it just seems like everyone is picking and wanting UCLA to win.
Yeah, I mean, I have Kentucky in this game, like almost certainly. Kentucky has become a top 10 defense in the country, according to KenPom. I think that's a big factor here. Kentucky's also recently done a better job of slowing games down when they need to. Wichita State obviously slowed them down in the last game, but like against Florida, they slowed that game down to below 70 possessions. They found a way to shut down Florida's offense, but they also found a way to get their own efficient half-court offense. And that's been the biggest difference, I think, with them over the course of the last, I guess maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks or so. It feels like to me that they're less reliant on Malik Monk now offensively than they were in the past and in the early 2 months of the season. They've always been a really good defensive team, and this was the UCLA game the first time around was definitely their worst defensive performance of the year. I don't think that's going to happen again. I think that they play better defensively. They slow the game down a little bit. They don't let UCLA run. And then it's just going to come down to, does Lonzo Ball just, go wild against De'Aaron Fox? And I don't see that happening. I think that they're even players, or at least relatively close to even players. And you're right, Lonzo Ball has shown the ability to defend against really, really good players. But the thing that Lonzo struggles with most is really, really quick players. He's really good at switching on to bigger players and kind of shutting them down. He's really good at, just kind of, being able to help in penetration. He really cares. Like he will get up in your ass if you really, or like if he's like locked in. He's a very, very aggressive defender. That kind of doesn't work against De'Aaron Fox. His handle's too tight. He's too quick. He'll just blow right by you. So I think Fox has the better game here. I think that Kentucky goes on to win because they're just going to be able to get more efficient half-court offense than UCLA will.
Yeah, it'll be tricky for me. I'll be at the Garden watching those games, and so basically I'll have the game up on my computer while I'm watching the other stuff. The nightmare is that my game ends, although mine's a later tip, I believe. So I should be able to see the Kentucky-UCLA ending because I think my game should have anywhere from 4 to 8 minutes to go. So that's the hope.
That's beautiful. This is going to be my last question for you. We have to get out of here at the 40-minute mark, I believe. Elite Eight matchups. What is the Elite Eight matchup you most want to see?
Arizona Gonzaga, I gotta think is the one that I'm most pining for. One, because it would guarantee that one of those two guys who are very worthy to a Final Four would get there. I believe that it would be a fantastic game. Now they've played it wasn't on the floor in that game. It was won by 7 points. I would just love to see those teams in San Jose. I think you'd get the best out of both of them. Like I think it would be a tremendous game. I that's the one that I'm interested in, and I would say that's one, and then I would say Carolina UCLA would be 2, Kentucky Carolina would be 3, Kansas Oregon would be 4 of the potential regional final. That would be my top.
Yeah, I think that Gonzaga Arizona is the one I most want to happen. I don't know if it's the one I most want to watch because I've already seen those two teams play live this year whenever they came down to Staples Center. I think the game I most want to see is a rematch of North Carolina, Kentucky, because holy crap was that game fun the first time. Like those...
It can't. I know, Sam. It can't, but it can't surpass the original. There's just no shot.
I'm not sure if it can or not. I mean, just with the ramped up intensity of the NCAA tournament, it might feel like it's better, even if it's not like an actually played better game. I don't know. I just really want to see those two teams go at it again. The craziest thing that I think that we talked about, like Final Four coaches, we want one of Sean Miller or Mark Few to get to the Final Four. The craziest thing that I've been thinking about over the course of the last couple days or so, one of Greg Gard, Mike White, Scott Drew, or Frank Martin is going to be a Final Four coach whenever we're down there in Phoenix next week. That's kind of cool, right?
It is. For Mike White, he'll get to the final. All right, so here's the scenario.
First and foremost, I've been talking about Mike White as an incredible coach for like 3 or 4 years now. You remember
he's
me
really
talking
good.
him up. He is great.
I was as in on that hire in that year when he was hired 2 years ago as any other hire in that offseason. Then Mike White, for one, in getting to NCAA tournaments and making Final Fours, he has never been a part of a tournament level until this year. With times when he was a player at Old Miss, never made it on any staff until this year. So that would be pretty wild. Guard, well, then he gets there for the first time, and then he kind of proves Bo Ryan correct. This Nigel Hayes, Bronson Koenig, and if you want to throw Vito Brown there, I'm cool. I'm cool with it. Class gets to 3 Final Fours in 4 seasons. That is seriously rarefied air. Almost no college players can ever claim the same. There'd be something to say for that, and just I could totally see myself writing about just like the perception of Wisconsin basketball as a program. It would be elevated, and it would be warranted if they had made yet another Final Four. Scott Drew does it, then obviously it's just an incredible finality, no matter what were to happen in the Final Four, to get that program to the ultimate weekend in college basketball. And when you think about what Baylor was, 11 years ago and what he inherited, it would be pretty incredible, to be honest. And it feels like most of the Scott Drew cheats talk has just pretty much died off at this point. He's been able to shed that as well. And then South Carolina, that would be a Cinderella story. I know they're from the S. Never even remotely sniffed like this, having to go through a legitimate big tournament and win so many games. Frank Martin, who was coaching in high school all of a decade, to be able to do that would be incredible. Compelling with each of those teams and those coaches, and someone's going to be off. Of them are glitter. Wisconsin's the closest thing because they've got Hayes and Koenig, who people are familiar with. But I'll be excited to write about any of those weeks through on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think it's going to be a really fun weekend of basketball. And are you excited to get down to Phoenix and just be ready for the Final Four? Because I know that, again, that might be your favorite weekend of the year.
Actually, I mean, it's very fun. Every weekend has its deals. Aerosmith is there. I actually don't think there's anyone that I feel like I need to see. So sometimes that it's something that I want to make time for, but it's also easier on the schedule when I know that because it's a free concert and there's a number of acts. One that I'm really super psyched to see. Are you going to be flying or driving out to the desert? What's your plan?
I am driving. I've already talked to Doster about how I'm apparently chauffeuring people around while we're down there.
Well, that's not why I asked, but I just wondered if you were making that drive. What is that, like 5 hours?
It'll be like 5 hours down there. I'll probably leave on like Wednesday morning, drive down, get down there, and meet up with you guys for dinner, and we'll do the thing.
We'll do the thing. That'll be a good time. I wonder what the teams will be. It'll be a blast, and maybe I can get Parrish to do some sort of reunion pod. Make that happen. It's just a matter. He's also he's not at the same hotel as me. Why? Because he is CBS quote talent unquote because he does TV stuff. So all of his travel and his hotel
last year.
Yeah, it was just what we did, but it was in closer quarters. I'm trying to remember what it was last year. It wasn't as like I think he's like nowhere even near us at this point.
Well, Phoenix
we'll
is
see
so
if we can,
spread out that like it's a mess.
Yeah, I know it's going to run into the problem that Dallas spread out. Houston last year was in 2011 way spread out. That was not a good thing. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, we got to get there and see what the layout is. But hopefully, the NCAA puts a lot of thought and effort into this. But sometimes just you can't help it if the football stadium is just so far away from the natural spot of where the hotels or the nightlife should be. Could be a little bit of a disaster. But we're going to try and get a 3-man podcast going. Heck, maybe we get Goodman. Maybe we have you meet Borzello for the first time as we record the podcast. And we just do some sort of disastrous 5-man podcast. The entire history, the entire Ion College basketball coaching or a podcast tree, because originally it was the College Hoops Journal podcast and it was my podcast. And then they asked me to bring it over to CBS, and so I did. And then I would host it and bring on random guests, and I'd have Goodman and Parrish on Wednesdays, and I'd have other guests on Monday and Fridays. Then Goodman left, and then Parrish took over as host, and it was me and Parrish and Borzello, and then it was me, you, and Parrish, and now it's just me and Parrish. I think we should get all 5 of us in the same room, and I think it would be a calamity, but I really would love to try and do that. It's probably not going to be doable, but I really want to try it.
Well, first and foremost, there would just be too many drinks flowing if we got all 4 of us in that room, plus you, trying to keep the peace. Because I feel like that would be your role there. You would be trying to keep the peace in that situation.
Yeah, it would be an amazing calamity. I really want to try it.
Oh my God! Well, this has been the Game Theory Podcast. Thanks to Matt Norlander for coming on. Matt, tell the people where they can find your work.
Well, they can check out cbssports.com. And no, legitimately, though, the CBS Sports app, I genuinely, I wouldn't even bring it up if I didn't believe this. I wouldn't even mention it. The CBS Sports app is just awesome. If you just, the score interface is really good. Easy to scroll story stuff. You don't get totally bombarded with videos. You have the option to play it out of time. So I'm a big fan of the sports app. And as always, you can follow me for terrible jokes and halfway decent college hoops analysis on Twitter at Matt Norlander.
And music, of course.
There we go. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm going to have something on Sindarius Thornwell on Thursday. I wrote something on Wednesday about how NBA executives try and combat succumbing to small sample size theater of the NCAA tournament. On Monday, I wrote about Jason Tatum, and on Wednesday at Sporting News, I think I even wrote about some of the guys who have helped themselves in terms of the NBA draft since this NCAA tournament has gotten started. So lots of content out there from me this week, lots of content from good Matt Norlander over at CBS Sports. Again, our sponsors have been SeatGeek and MyBookie. You can go to each of those places and get seats to games, get places to place bets. Wow, I totally just butchered that. And as you guys can tell, again, I do not have a script in front of me, so this is just a total disaster at the end here. So we're going to cut it short. Thanks again for listening. You can subscribe here on SoundCloud, Google Play, Stitcher, Android, iTunes. I would appreciate it if you left some iTunes reviews, ratings, everything like that. Subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us get our rating up in iTunes, which helps more people listen to the podcast. So until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.